An anxious-avoidant relationship is not doomed to fail. Despite what TikTok tells you, this dynamic isn't just one long push and pull story that can only end in heartbreak. Here's what I want you to hear today. These relationships aren't damned. They're just delicate. And like anything delicate, they need a different kind of care. So today I want to show you something most people completely miss when they try to fix an anxious-avoidant dynamic. A truth that goes far deeper than just communication skills or attachment styles. I'm Jourdan Travers. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I work with individuals and couples who are tired of repeating the same emotional patterns, especially when it comes to love. And this video is about the one thing anxious-avoidant partners should agree on if they want to make their relationship work. So let's get into it. An anxious-avoidant relationship is exactly what it sounds like. Two people caught in opposite survival strategies. One person clings and the other distances. One fears abandonment and the other fears engulfment. And the irony is that they often fall for each other hard. Because in the beginning, their patterns seem to fit. The anxious partner feels the emotional high of being chosen, and the avoidant partner feels adored and pampered until things get too close. But what happens next? That's the question a 2024 study tried to answer. The study followed 557 college students between 18 and 29 years old, most of them women, and the researchers wanted to know, why are insecurely attached relationships so much more unstable than secure ones? And what they found was this. Nearly half of these young adults were already struggling to manage their emotions. Things like stress, overwhelm, mood swings, and shutdowns. But here's what made it worse. Their attachment style. Those with insecure attachment, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized, made up almost 3/4 of the group. That's huge. And when researchers looked closer, they saw that those who had high attachment anxiety, the kind that makes you cling, overthink, obsess, even beg, had the hardest time regulating emotions. But avoidant people, they weren't off the hook either. They also struggled, just differently. They shut down, they numbed out, they avoided conflict, and their emotions got pushed further and further underground. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. The researchers found that women with anxious attachment struggled more than men. Not because they're weaker, but because they often internalize pain. They ruminate, they stay longer, and they feel things harder. So imagine this. You're a young woman in a relationship. You have an anxious attachment. Your partner avoids closeness. You feel abandoned, and they feel suffocated. Neither of you means to hurt the other, but every conversation turns into a trigger. And your emotions, they're not just high, they feel unmanageable. You might cry more, they might go silent. You try to talk it out, and they leave mid-sentence. That's not just bad communication, that's your nervous system trying to protect you from each other. This is why securely attached couples have such an advantage. They can fight without spiraling. They can express their needs without fear of rejection or engulfment. But for insecure couples, especially anxious-avoidant ones, the margin for error is so much smaller because every conversation feels like a threat to survival. So, now we know the core vulnerability. When there's no shared foundation to stand on, the whole relationship becomes a negotiation of needs, where neither side really wins. And here's where most people get stuck. They try to fix anxious-avoidant patterns with tools, better communication, nervous system regulation, attachment theory knowledge. They keep trying to manage the symptoms, but they never look at the foundation. That's where value alignment comes in. When two people agree on what matters, how they want to live, love, parent, grow, heal, they suddenly have a reason to stay in it, a reason to persevere through the discomfort. Because now it's not just about personal triggers, it's about a shared purpose. And this isn't just therapy talk, it's backed by data, a lot of it. A massive global study looked at over 79,000 couples and analyzed more than a century of research. They wanted to understand what kinds of traits partners actually share, what makes people stay, and what really sticks. The answer was clear. It wasn't personality, it wasn't mental health, and it wasn't how anxious or avoidant you are. The strongest correlations across time, across culture, across millions of couples were things like education level, substance use habits, and political and religious beliefs. In other words, values. What you believe, how you live, what kind of future you want, those are the things that anchor a couple. Now, let me break this down. This study found that even though things like depression, anxiety, or attachment style didn't strongly match between partners, educational attainment and values showed moderate to high similarity. And political and religious beliefs, well, they had some of the highest correlations across all categories. Even things like drinking and smoking patterns tended to match, which means if your partner drinks more, you probably do too. And if they're health conscious, it's more likely that you are. And the reverse is also true. One study they cited found that smokers are less likely to quit if their partner smokes. And get this, being married reduced drinking in men, but it increased it in women. That's how powerful these shared norms and dynamics are. So what does this mean for anxious avoidant couples? Well, it means that emotional mismatch, one person craving closeness while the other craving space, can't be the only thing that you're working with. Because if your values are aligned, and if you want the same kind of life, if your why is shared, you suddenly have a reason to stay in the hard conversations. When your anxious partner spirals, you don't just shut down, you remember they're the one that I want to raise kids with. When your avoidant partner pulls away, you don't panic. You remember that we both want to build a peaceful home. Shared values pull you back to the center. They make the emotional labor feel worth it. And they help you to regulate not just your feelings, but your expectations. And here's something else that the study found that I think is so important. There was a lot of variability in partner similarity across cultures and time periods, meaning what people seek in each other often shifts depending on context. But values still came out on top, even when everything else, things like income, background, genetics, were wildly different. So no, your attachment style doesn't doom you. But if you're anxiously attached and dating someone who's avoidant, it's going to take more than just chemistry to make it last. You need alignment, not in everything, but in the big stuff. How you see the world, what you believe is right, and where you want the relationship to go. Because when you share those things, you create a kind of emotional gravity, a pull that's stronger than the push and pull of fear. A shared truth that makes the discomfort make sense. And if you're in this dynamic right now, I want you to know it can change, but it starts with asking, do we truly want the same life? That's the doorway. And if you're not sure how to get clear on that, or how to communicate your values in a way that builds connection instead of conflict, this is the kind of work that I and many other therapists do with individuals and couples every day. Until then, I'm Jourdan Travers. I'm the clinical director at Awake Therapy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.